blue is the growth of the service desk area, and then the dark green is the growth of the IT asset management, where we see tremendous growth between 2010 and 2013. A couple of things I want to point out here as well. The server management, of course, that's the platform to some extent as a service, or the infrastructure as a service. We see tremendous growth there as well from a SaaS or from a cloud perspective. This next slide shows you in actual dollars again. This is how we predict the growth in terms of the dollars, and I highlighted here both the service desk and the IT asset management, which is part of ITSM. And you can see here from 2008 to 2009, actual growth, tremendous growth in terms of the actual dollars, and we're predicting more growth here with the market in the service desk to become a $1.2 billion in 2013. So very interesting shift we see with regards to service desk. All right, so quickly let's step back. We saw the differences between SaaS, ASP, and AO. We saw the adoption is moving really into a growth stage. We're seeing and looking currently at the market share. Now what I wanted to do is share with you what are some of the values clients are citing in terms of adopting SaaS. First one is reduce the upfront costs. Not necessarily just reducing upfront costs, but also I see clients want a bit more predictability over time and of costs. Now this is not just predictability of the solution itself, but also the amount of work, the amount of maintenance, the amount of upgrades, the amount of additional features which might be added on and typically are part of a maintenance in an on-premise, but sometimes we see additional components and modules being added on, and if we want that piece to be added on, we might have to add additional dollars. Second is disproving value before committing to a particular solution. Now, there's still many organizations today who have who are greenfield opportunities. What I mean by that, they have their own in-house developed solutions, or they might have something which they outgrew and they want to become much more solid around IT service management, maybe grow their help desk into a service desk, extend it to asset management. But before committing to a particular vendor or to a particular situation, they want to make sure that they get value. So here we have the possibility to demo and to sandbox these solutions. Ability to scale up or down is another value. Here, when we have mergers and acquisitions, or even if we see some challenges in the economy with divestitures, we have the ability to scale up or down with regards to the solution, where we can modify the footprint in terms of what we have, what we're using from a user's perspective. And then last but not least, a lot of the risk with regards to development, the software itself, the hardware, the maintenance, the application, the customization is offloaded to the SaaS vendor. And we in IT, those who are service management folks and have gone down this path, we have can focus on our work and doing our IT service management as a function rather than worrying about solutions and all of the attached pieces around it. Now, the next slide shows us when we asked our clients in February of 2009, why were you not interested in software as a service? We did see security concerns as the second most important challenges clients have cited. The first one, total cost concerns, actually has to do with that customers did not necessarily do a good job of understanding what a SaaS environment might be in a 1, 2, 3, up 5 years out, and we're not necessarily understanding that correctly, which is why at the end of the presentation of the decision model, it's important that we do get a good understanding of that, and I'll get back to that in a bit. Other concerns were the integration issues. If we bring in IT service management solutions, in many cases, we have to integrate with existing environments, be it ERP systems, be it Exchange or Active Directory. Many of the SaaS vendors have done a great job of making sure that integration is a easy task and can be done. All right, so let's get to a model which I think will help you, and this is really the next part of this leftover time we have. I want to talk you through a decision model which allows us to give a little bit more structure in terms of what we should look at. Now, I called this on slide 31 a more science than art decision model. So let's look at the first point, and this is really very, very important to do a financial analysis with regards to what's happening. The line items to think about is, do you need third-party process consulting? Many times when we adopt IT service management, we need to think about our maturity of incident problem change, config, and other processes, and understand. Potentially, if the maturity is low, we need to think about process consulting. Now, this is both for SaaS and for on-premise. We also should be looking at the license cost versus subscription cost across the implementation phase, the integration phase, and the training phase. We should look at administration, maintenance, and upgrades versus the on-premise versus SaaS. And as I mentioned, in many cases, in the administration, maintenance, and upgrades, those are part of SaaS. In an on-premise, it's a little bit different. There are different types of models. How much do we need to invest in support, administration, and user management? In many cases, there is a tremendous reduction in cost on that, but still there needs to be a financial analysis based on both the SaaS side and the on-premise side to make a good decision. Second bullet here, the capital efficiency. Do we want to make sure that we have, or do we need to think about direct cost avoidance? Many times capital expenses are expensed differently in different organizations and different companies. So looking at your capital efficiency, understanding the output per capital investment is also important, and to put a dollar sign to that. Third point, the protection of assets. Maybe we have certain assets we want to leverage for other projects and tasks. And because of that, hardware such as servers where we potentially would put our on-premise solutions on, we can avoid, and due to that we have some cost avoidance. Certainly an interesting perspective, depending again on the size of the company and the size of the scale of the solution, but certainly something to think about. Additionally, if we look at this particular picture, slide 32, business impact is important as well. And this is one I speak to many clients and highlight that with them. Do you need uptime guarantee? In many cases, it depends on the vertical. In ITSM, I think very critical, maybe not as critical in some verticals, and maybe not as critical related to ITSM, but still important to understand if that is a key item for you. Penalties for missed service level agreements. Make sure that you understand and have an expectation for if there is availability or performance issues, which are stated in your SLA, that you have an understanding what the penalties are from the vendor. Many times we have clients who unfortunately did not look at that in much detail, and there are some SLAs which are structured well and SLAs which are not as structured as well as we expect. Compliance, if there is a compliance ruling, if there is something there from a regulatory and compliance perspective we need to take a look at. And then in some companies, I've seen the mandate to go SaaS model. We've seen companies who have actually 90% of what they have actually moved into a cloud. And it could potentially be just a mandate. So the business impact there is we are going with that choice no matter what. Also, user productivity. Many times it's important to understand, do we want immediate user productivity Of course, that is, sometimes it's like, yes, of course we do. But at the same time, understanding the use cases and truly getting close and aligned with the consumers of the service management solution, and particularly in the service desk and the asset, we might not have the option, and we might do a little bit more extension there and understanding. Do we want to also reduce staff or shift in staff? We might want to think about level 1, level 2, combinations. I've seen multiple levels of expert centers being formed in a combination of level 1 and level 2. So understanding what we want there from a productivity perspective and putting some dollars with it makes sense as well. We talked a little bit about risk already, so understanding and deciding who does want the implementation risk. Do we want to understand and have that ourselves? Do we want to share that if we think SaaS? At the same time, on the impact, the strategy, and the measurements, we want to understand where the risk sits and how can we live and what risk factors do we need to put in into our formula. And last but not least, understanding the skills and the processes. We already talked a little bit about that, but doing a good process maturity checking, giving you an idea where you are from a maturity assessment, understanding the size and the skill of your team members might help you on your decision. When you adopt SaaS, lots of out-of-the-box capabilities, immediate implementation, but again, understanding where your skills are is important there. And then last but not least, looking at your technical requirements. What integrations do you need? What depth and breadth of the solution do you want to, based on the demands from the business? Support needs, what do you have available? What is needed for the SaaS versus on-premise? And then the maintenance need, balancing that out. So with these points, I do believe that when you incorporate and leverage all those, you have a much more of a science than an art decision model with regards to going SaaS or not, either switching to SaaS or staying on-premise. More items around the contract, and I cannot stress this very much. To understand your uptime and performance details up front, what are disaster recovery and business continuity agreements, how much support assistance do you get, what is the 24/7 if you are worldwide and global, you want to understand that and weight that against the on-premise ability of the vendor to support you. Technical requirements, I talked a little bit about that already. And then the SaaS vendor or the vendor value, not just for the SaaS, but of course also for the on-premise. What's the size and profitability of the vendor? Sometimes the profitability and size is difficult to get because some of the companies are private. Doing a check with the reference site is of course important. And then there is also the mix of SaaS and in terms of the other businesses you have or the other business you're taking, do you want to have the vendor who supports you on-premise as part of the formula inside your SaaS solution in SaaS? So to leave you with a checklist, here are just a review quickly on what you should look at: the budget, the contract, the SLAs. You also should be looking at the speed to delivery. Compare that with on-premise and SaaS. Your security and business continuity concerns. Understand the data centers of these vendors. Where are they, and are there any risks for you? The performance and uptime, again, this depends on your scope and size. And then last but not least, the vendor viability and trust you have with regards to that particular vendor. All right, we're almost there and almost ready for questions. So let me leave you with a couple, actually 4 recommendations. The first one is you do need to have a formal method for due diligence, and do follow the steps I indicated, understanding costs, benefits, and risks, which are